And in fact, we saw one 7-year-old who was already completely aware of the odds and the betting, which is an indication of the concerns. Green Senator Richard Di Natale joins us now. Thank you very much for your time. You're, of course, part of that inquiry. What did you make of Channel 9 and their sort of view on the way they had incorporated Tom Waterhouse into their coverage?
Well, clearly there's a lot of concern in the community. People are sick of the fact that they're watching a game of footy and they're having gambling ads being rammed down their throat. But it's not just simply the ads through the ad breaks. It's now the fact that gambling's become embedded as part of the commentary. And you're getting a situation where young kids are watching a game of footy with their parents and they don't know when the gambling stops and the footy starts. The two things have become entangled, and I think that's a pretty dangerous place to be.
And there we see Tom Waterhouse there plugging his odds at the very start of that clip. We saw him sitting with the commentators at the very start. And as I mentioned, even Channel 9 backed away from that in subsequent rounds.
Well, Channel 9 and I think the NRL have acknowledged that was a mistake. But what they've done is they've improved it a little bit. But there is still a situation where you've got a bookmaker, essentially, on the ground at half-time, before the game and after the game.
As if he was a boundary rider.
Exactly,
yeah.
as if he's still part of the commentary team. I think the change they're going to make is they'll remove the Channel 9 logo from the microphone and put Tom Waterhouse, but a young kid won't be able to tell the difference. And what it does is it means that kids experience a game of football now as a gambling experience, and the last thing I want for my kids is to go to a game of footy and it to turn into a mini casino. I want them to enjoy the spectacle and all the good things there are associated with the sport. But the gambling needs to be separate, needs to be made very clearly separate, and the code that both the NRL, the broadcasters and the industry have signed on to doesn't go far enough.
Has the major dramas around drugs, match fixing and gambling that has come out prior to the season starting had any impact in terms of some of the major players and how they view these kind of spots?
I think they're much more aware of it now, and the ACCC said very clearly that there's a link between organised crime, gambling, drugs and sport. I think the integrity aspect is one issue, and I'm on side with the industry when they say that there needs to be a regulated industry in Australia to prevent corruption. I think that's fair enough, and we don't want people to be going offshore, betting on overseas websites where there's no capacity to monitor corrupt activities. But it's more just the creep into the game and the fact that it's now become part of the game. Can you imagine if the commentary team had a six-pack and started cracking open a few beers saying thanks to our sponsors? I mean, that's the equivalent. That's what we're seeing here in gambling, where we've got this privileged space on the ground and we're giving it to these advertisers in a way that we don't give to any of the other advertisers.
The problem is, and you talked about the money involved, is the genie out of the bottle, and it's hard to put it back in because increasingly funds are relying on this cash.
I think we're at a very critical point where we've got to make a decision about the sort of regulatory framework we want. With tobacco, we saw a situation where things got so bad that we eliminated all advertising and sponsorship. That was a good thing. I think we've got to put the brakes on. We've got to decide what sort of framework we want. I'm not happy with the voluntary code, and I think there is a place for government regulation. In fact, the Greens have got a bill that will put some restrictions around this, and I hope to introduce it in the next session.
But who do you restrict, Richard? Is it the broadcasters or the sport? Because the AFL has pulled back from this kind of sponsorship, but the broadcaster is still able to put it in.
Well, you simply make a regulation that says it's not appropriate to advertise gambling during sports viewing times, particularly when kids are watching. That's the thing is, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of kids being exposed to this activity.